AITA for telling my sister she can't force her boyfriend to move in with me? I, 28F, have a fairly standard living situation. I rent a 2-bedroom apartment in a city where rent is high, but it's manageable because I live with my best friend, Mia, 27F. Mia and I have been roommates since college, and while we're not related, we consider each other family. Our apartment is small, but it works because we both value personal space. We each have our rooms and share common areas, and we have rules about visitors, overnight guests, and quiet hours. Nothing crazy, just normal roommate agreements. My sister, Sarah, 30F, recently got a new boyfriend, Matt, 32M. Sarah and Matt have been dating for about 4 months. When they first started dating, I was excited for her. She's always been a little unlucky in love, and Matt seemed genuinely nice. But over the last 2 months, Sarah has started acting invasive, and it's starting to affect me. It all started a few weeks ago when Sarah casually mentioned that she and Matt were thinking about moving in together soon, and she laughed, saying, "Maybe you can just let him crash at your place until we find a place." I laughed it off at first, thinking it was a joke, but she kept bringing it up in different ways. First, she asked if he could stay just a few nights when she had work trips. Then, she started asking if he could store a few boxes in my closet temporarily because their apartment was too small. The requests escalated quickly, and I started feeling uncomfortable. I tried to set boundaries gently. I told her, "Look, Mia and I have a system here. It's just the two of us, and we can't really accommodate anyone else long-term." She brushed it off, saying, "Oh, come on, it's just for a little while. Matt's really nice, and it'll be fun." I repeated myself, but she started guilt-tripping me. "I can't believe you're being like this. I thought you loved me. It's not like we're asking for forever, just a few months." Things came to a head last weekend. Sarah called me crying, saying Matt was being forced to stay in a friend's place because I refused to help. I asked her what she expected me to do, and she said, "Just let him move in. You barely use the guest room anyway. It's perfect." I reminded her that the guest room is where Mia keeps her work-from-home setup when she needs quiet space, and I value our private areas. Sarah got angry and said, "Mia doesn't even live here full-time, so it shouldn't matter." At this point, I was done. I told her very clearly, "I love you, but you cannot expect me to just hand over my home to your boyfriend. Our apartment is our space. Matt is welcome for a visit, a weekend, but he cannot live here." End of discussion. Sarah lost it. She said I was selfish, that I didn't care about her or her relationship, and that I was choosing an apartment over family. She told our parents about it, and now they're on her side, saying I should help a family member in need. Mia backed me up privately. She said she totally agreed with me, that she didn't want a third person living here, and that it would disrupt our entire dynamic. But with my parents pressuring me, I started to doubt myself. Maybe I am being unreasonable. A couple of additional details. I have a very tight budget, and adding another adult would increase bills significantly. Sarah and Matt are well off, but she seems to assume I should absorb any inconvenience. I have severe anxiety, and sharing my space with someone I don't know well for long periods is extremely stressful for me. Sarah has a history of being manipulative when she wants something. I feel like she's leveraging family guilt to get her way. I told my parents that I couldn't accommodate Matt, and they asked me to at least think about it or make a plan for him. I offered for him to stay for one night while they find temporary housing if absolutely necessary. But Sarah keeps saying that's not enough. She says I'm emotionally abusing her and that I hate Matt. I love Sarah, and I want her to be happy, but I feel like she is completely ignoring my boundaries. I've been trying to handle it kindly and calmly, but it feels like she's escalating everything instead of listening. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in with me, even temporarily? I feel like this is basic personal boundaries, and I shouldn't be guilt-tripped into giving up my home. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiance stay in my house after he cheated. So this is a long one, and honestly, I'm still processing everything that happened. I'll try to be as detailed as possible. I, 28F, have a sister, Emily, 32F. We've always been close, even though we have completely different personalities. Emily is extremely social, outgoing, and has always been a bit of a thrill seeker, while I'm more introverted and tend to stick to a smaller circle of people. Despite that, we've always supported each other. Emily has been dating her fiancé, Matt, 35M, for about 3 years. When she first started dating him, I had my reservations. He seemed charming and funny, but something always fell off to me, a gut feeling I couldn't quite explain. Emily insisted that I was overthinking things and that I didn't really know him, so I tried to trust her judgment. Fast forward to last month, Emily called me late one night, crying and panicked. She told me she had just found out that Matt had been cheating on her with multiple women over the past year. My heart sank, of course, because I could see how devastated she was. She didn't have a place to stay at the moment, because she had just broken off their engagement and Matt had kicked her out of the apartment they shared. She asked if she could come stay with me temporarily until she figured out her next steps. I told her, of course, no questions asked. When she arrived, she was in a complete state, crying constantly, not sleeping, barely eating. I did my best to make her comfortable, gave her space when she needed it, and tried to be supportive. Emily had only told me about the cheating, but not all the details. I didn't push because I didn't want to overwhelm her. A week later, she revealed something that completely threw me off. Apparently, Matt had texted her from a burner phone, begging her to reconsider and saying he realized his mistakes and wanted to reconcile. Emily, understandably angry, had ignored him at first. But then, one night, she said she got a message from him asking if he could stay at my place for a night because he had nowhere else to go. I froze. I could not even process what she was asking me. I told her no. I explained that he had cheated on her multiple times, had emotionally manipulated her, and that he could not be allowed in my home under any circumstances. Emily got upset. She said I was being too harsh and that maybe he was genuinely remorseful and needed a place to crash temporarily. I refused again. She then said, "You're being unfair. You've always liked to be the good sister, but now you're judging me for my choices. Just think about it. What if he really wants to change?" I stayed firm. I told her it wasn't about judging her. It was about boundaries. My home is my sanctuary, and I would not host someone who had hurt my sister in such a profound way. I also reminded her that he had violated her trust in a way that can't just be brushed off, and that giving him a place in my house would feel like I was condoning his behavior. This led to a huge argument. Emily accused me of overreacting and letting my personal feelings get in the way of helping her. She said she would find somewhere else for him, but she also said she felt like I was isolating her because she had no one else to turn to. I tried to explain that I was here to help her, but helping didn't mean allowing someone who had caused immense harm into our lives. She left angry, saying I wasn't being the sister she thought I was. A couple of days later, Matt actually showed up at my doorstep unannounced. I hadn't opened the door yet, but I could hear him trying to talk to me through the door, pleading, saying he had nowhere else to go and that he deserved a second chance. I did not open the door. I called Emily immediately, furious that he would even try to come over. She told me he had texted her, saying he wanted to apologize in person, and she had encouraged him to try me because she thought I might be reasonable. I felt completely blindsided. I told her this was unacceptable and that if he ever came back, I would call the police. I explained that he was no longer welcome in our lives, and that her attempts to justify him staying with me were inappropriate. She got defensive, saying she just wanted him to face reality, and that I was being dramatic. I said that his actions had consequences, and consequences included him not being allowed into my home. Since then, Emily has been giving me the cold shoulder. She's staying with a friend now, and I haven't spoken to Matt at all. Emily occasionally texts me, but it's been tense. She says I need to learn forgiveness and that I'm making her feel unsupported. I feel like I'm being reasonable and protecting my own home while supporting her emotionally. AITA here. I know I said no to someone she used to love, But this isn't about my personal feelings. It's about safety, boundaries, and not condoning his behavior. I'm just not sure if I overstepped as her sister. AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me, even though she claims she has no other option. I, 29F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I have a stable job, a nice apartment in a quiet part of town, and I generally try to keep my life organized. My sister, Emma, 26F, has had a rougher time. She's had trouble holding down jobs, has a lot of credit card debt, and has had a string of bad relationships that always seem to end in disaster. We've always had a complicated relationship, but I care about her and try to help when I can. A couple of weeks ago, she called me in tears, saying she had nowhere to go. She had been evicted from her latest apartment because she fell behind on rent, and her boyfriend of a few months had just broken up with her. She begged me to let her stay with me until she got back on her feet. I told her I needed to think about it because my apartment isn't huge, I work long hours, and I value my personal space. After thinking it over, I realized that I really couldn't handle having her live with me. My apartment is a one-bedroom, and I have a cat that doesn't do well with other people around constantly. I also knew from past experience that when she stays with friends or family, things tend to get tense very quickly. She has a habit of borrowing money and not paying it back, leaving a mess in the apartment and creating arguments over the smallest things. I decided to tell her that I couldn't let her move in, but I offered to help her find temporary housing, assist with job applications, and even help her pay for a short-term stay at a hostel or Airbnb. Emma didn't take it well. She accused me of being selfish, saying that I was choosing my comfortable little life over family. She said she felt completely abandoned and that I had no right to leave her to figure everything out alone. I tried to explain that helping her doesn't mean she has to live with me, and that I was more than willing to provide financial and logistical support, but she didn't seem to hear me. She's been posting things on social media hinting that I'm a bad sister, which my other friends and family have seen. Our parents have weighed in. My mom told me that maybe I could compromise by letting her stay just for a few weeks, but my dad seemed to understand my position and said I shouldn't feel guilty for setting boundaries. I've tried to stick to my stance, but I'm starting to feel a little guilty. I do want to help Emma, but I also know my limits. I've thought about whether I'm overreacting and being too rigid. A few things happened that reinforce my decision. Emma has a pattern of ignoring house rules, such as staying up late, inviting people over without asking, and using other people's things without permission. I also know from past experience that her financial problems tend to become my problem if I let her live with me. I'm not made of money, and I can't be responsible for her debts or a potential eviction again. On the other hand, I also know that she genuinely does not have anywhere else to go. I've considered that maybe I could make it work if I set very strict boundaries and rules, but I'm worried that it would destroy my own mental health. I already work long hours and have been dealing with anxiety lately, and the thought of having constant tension in my living space makes me feel physically ill. Some friends are saying that I'm being cold, and I should just help my sister because family comes first. Others are saying that I'm right to protect my own home and mental health. I feel like I'm stuck between not wanting to abandon my sister in a tough situation and not wanting to sacrifice my own stability for a scenario I know will end badly. To make things worse, Emma has started telling mutual friends that I kicked her out on purpose and that I don't care about her. That's not true at all. I've tried to help her in other ways. I even offered to help her apply for jobs, offered a small loan for her to get a temporary place, and said I would check in on her daily to make sure she's okay. But it seems like she only wants the solution that involves me giving up my home for her. I am honestly torn. I know boundaries are important, and I know that enabling her could make her situation worse in the long run. But seeing her upset and thinking that she truly has nowhere else to go is breaking my heart. I don't want to be a bad sister, but I also don't want to put myself in a situation where I regret it later. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me, even though she claims she has no other option. Edit. I should clarify that I have offered multiple forms of support that don't involve her living with me. I just feel like those offers are being ignored. Edit 2. Some people have asked if I could move temporarily to a bigger place or find a roommate situation for her. I've looked into that, but given my work schedule, cost, and my cat, it's not really feasible for me to accommodate that at the moment. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insulted my husband? I, 34F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 29F, until recently. We grew up in a small town, and our parents were always very hands-on with everything, including big life events. Emily has always been the type to be a little dramatic, but I never thought it would affect our relationship this much. My husband, Jake, 36M, and I have been married for 8 years, and we have a very supportive and happy marriage. Emily recently got engaged to her fiancé, Ryan, 32M, and as the family's only sibling pair, she immediately started talking about how I would naturally host the wedding at our parents' property. At first, I thought it was just a casual suggestion because my parents have a big backyard, and we've hosted family events there before. I tentatively said I'd think about it, not wanting to commit until we discussed logistics, finances, and responsibilities. The problems began when Emily started treating the conversation as a given. She started sending me articles about how to host the perfect wedding and subtle hints about paying for certain things. I gently tried to tell her that hosting a wedding isn't just about lending the space. It's a massive financial and logistical commitment. She brushed it off, saying that since I have a nice house, a stable marriage, and apparently a lot of disposable income, I shouldn't mind helping out my little sister. I got frustrated, but tried to stay calm. I told her that I couldn't commit to anything until we discussed things thoroughly, and that I would need to know exactly what she expected financially and otherwise. Things escalated during a family Zoom call with our parents. Emily suddenly dropped a comment about Jake, saying something along the lines of, I don't know how you put up with him. He's so controlling and boring sometimes. At first, I thought I misheard her, but she kept talking, saying that a man like Jake probably wouldn't even know how to host a party properly, and that it's just easier if I take care of things myself. I was completely shocked and embarrassed. My parents were silent, clearly uncomfortable, and I just sat there, staring at her. After the call, I told Emily I needed some space because I couldn't believe she had insulted my husband like that. She called me later, furious that I was overreacting and taking things too personally. She said she was just joking and that I shouldn't be so sensitive. I told her that insulting my spouse and then expecting me to host her wedding as if nothing happened was unacceptable. I also made it clear that hosting the wedding was no longer something I was willing to consider. Emily didn't take this well. She immediately started texting our parents, painting me as selfish and saying I was trying to ruin her wedding. She sent a series of messages accusing me of being petty, controlling, and unsupportive. My parents called me the next day and asked why I was refusing to help, saying that Emily was hurt and didn't understand why I wouldn't just move past a little joke. I explained everything, including the comment about Jake and how hurtful it was. My parents seemed to understand my side, but were worried about the family tension it would create. Now, Emily has stopped speaking to me entirely. She's blocked me on social media and has been telling other family members that I'm being unreasonable and ruining her plans. My husband supports me completely and says that hosting the wedding after her behavior would be enabling her to be disrespectful. Some friends say I'm in the right, while others are concerned that I'm letting a family conflict escalate. The reason I feel conflicted is that I do want my sister to have a beautiful wedding, and part of me feels guilty for refusing to help. At the same time, I don't think it's fair for her to insult my spouse and then expect me to drop everything to host her wedding. Hosting a wedding is not just lending a space. It involves a lot of time, money, and effort, and I can't imagine doing it for someone who has been so disrespectful. I've tried reaching out to Emily a couple of times to talk, but she refuses to respond. Our parents keep asking me to consider making up for her sake, but I'm not sure if that's reasonable. Jake keeps telling me that I'm doing the right thing and that her behavior was completely unacceptable, but part of me still feels like maybe I'm being harsh. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insulted my husband and refused to acknowledge it. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in even though my parents begged me to. So this is going to be a long one, and I'm still feeling conflicted, but I need to know if I'm in the wrong here. I, 28M, live with my parents in a fairly large house. It's something we've done for most of my adult life, because I work remotely and my parents are older, so we sort of take care of each other. My younger sister, Emily, 25F, has been dating this guy, Jake, 27M, for about 2 years. He's nice enough, but I've had some red flags about him from the beginning. Nothing huge, just stuff that set me on edge. He tends to overstay his welcome when visiting. He's very pushy about things, and he never seems to respect boundaries, especially when it comes to money or personal space. I mentioned some of these things casually to my parents, but they brushed it off as me being protective or judgmental. A few weeks ago, Emily came over to tell me that she and Jake were thinking about moving in with us temporarily because their lease got messed up and they needed somewhere to stay while they figured it out. She made it sound casual, like it would only be for a month or two. My parents immediately got excited and started saying things like, "Oh, it'll be fun to have young people in the house again, and it'll be nice to have them around." They kept asking me if I was okay with it. I told them honestly that I wasn't comfortable with it. My room is upstairs, and Emily and Jake would have one of my old bedroom downstairs because it has its own bathroom. That already made me uncomfortable, and I had a bad feeling about having him in the house long term. I also work from home, and he's really loud and constantly on calls for his own freelance work, which would make concentration nearly impossible. I tried to explain all of this calmly to my parents, but they said I was overreacting and that Jake seemed like a normal guy and that I should just be nice. I decided to take a firm stance and told them that I couldn't agree to Jake moving in. I said I would feel uncomfortable and it would likely cause tension between us, which is unfair to everyone. My parents were visibly frustrated, but seemed to accept it at the time. I thought that was the end of it. The next day, Emily came over again, visibly upset. She started crying and said that Jake was really stressed and that it wasn't fair for him to have nowhere to stay. She also said that if I didn't allow it, I was choosing him over the family. I tried to stay calm and explained that this wasn't about choosing anyone over anyone else. It was about my boundaries and the fact that having Jake in the house would create a toxic environment. She started raising her voice, saying that I was selfish and that I never think about anyone but myself. At that point, my parents got involved. They said things like, "We've lived with you long enough. It's time to share the space. And Jake is practically family now. You can't shut him out." I reminded them that Jake has never actually lived here and that I am very comfortable here because I have my routines and space that I rely on for work and mental health. My mom snapped and said, "Well, maybe if you didn't act like a recluse all the time, people would want to live here." My dad sighed and muttered something about making sacrifices for family. Emily left that day, still crying, and Jake apparently confronted my parents directly, saying that I was being ridiculous and immature. My parents now seem to be holding some resentment toward me because they feel like I'm making Emily's life harder and creating unnecessary conflict. Since then, the house has been awkward. Emily texts me constantly about how I'm breaking the family and letting Jake down, and my parents keep bringing up hypothetical situations like, what if we needed to host someone else in a pinch? Wouldn't you let them stay? I feel like I'm being punished for maintaining reasonable boundaries, but at the same time, I worry I'm being inflexible or unreasonable. I know I could compromise, maybe let Jake stay for a week or help him find a short-term rental, but the way they all pushed and guilt me makes me hesitant to agree to anything. I also worry that if I cave now, it will set a precedent where my comfort and boundaries are always secondary to their social preferences. So, Reddit, AITA here for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in, even though my parents and sister are upset about it. AITA for refusing to let my boyfriend's sister stay in our apartment for a month, even though he says I'm being unreasonable. I, 30F, live with my boyfriend, Jake, 32M, in a small one-bedroom apartment in the city. We've been living together for 3 years, and over that time, we've established routines and boundaries that work for both of us. I work from home as a freelance designer, so I spend a lot of time in our apartment, and it's very important to me that my workspace stays quiet and organized. Jake works in an office, so he spends most of the day out, but he values our routines and quiet evenings too. We also have a dog, Max, who is very attached to his routine and becomes anxious with sudden changes in our environment. Jake's sister, Laura, 29F, recently had an emergency with her apartment. Her building had major water damage, and the landlord said her unit would be uninhabitable for at least a month while repairs were done. She called Jake and asked if she could stay with us temporarily. He asked me what I thought, and I told him honestly that I wasn't comfortable with her staying for that long. I explained that our apartment is small, our work and home routines are important, and adding another adult for a month would be stressful for all of us, including Max. I suggested alternatives. I could help Laura find a short-term rental or Airbnb, contribute to temporary housing, or let her store some belongings here while she arranged more permanent accommodations. Jake initially seemed to understand, but then he called me back and said that Laura insisted it would only be temporary, that she'd be careful, and that I was overreacting. He said he felt bad refusing her and that it shouldn't be a big deal. I reiterated my points. The apartment isn't set up for 3 adults, Max's routine would be disrupted, and our own routines would be affected. I told him I was happy to help Laura in other ways that didn't involve her living with us, but full-time for a month was not feasible. Laura started texting me directly, saying I was selfish, uncaring, and making a mountain out of a molehill. She claimed our apartment is big enough for 3 people, and that Jake and I are prioritizing comfort over family. She also said that refusing to let her stay would permanently damage our relationship. Jake began pressuring me more. He suggested compromises like letting Laura sleep on the couch in the living room, or that we could just adjust for a month. I explained that even with those compromises, our routines, workspace, and Max's schedule would be seriously disrupted. I reminded him that I'm not unwilling to help. Financial support, assisting in finding temporary housing, or letting Laura store belongings here are all ways I can support her without appending our home. The situation escalated. Laura called our parents, and Jake's family started asking why we couldn't just let her stay. Jake began expressing frustration, saying I was being rigid and that I was damaging family relationships. Meanwhile, I feel guilty but also stressed and cornered. I've tried repeatedly to offer multiple reasonable alternatives, but they're all being ignored. They insist that the only acceptable solution is Laura staying here, and that I'm being selfish if I don't comply. I feel like I'm in a lose-lose situation. If I give in, it will disrupt my work, stress out Max, and set a precedent where anyone in the family expects to stay with us whenever they face a problem. If I stand firm, I risk damaging my relationship with Jake, causing tension with his family, and being framed as uncaring. I've communicated calmly, offered alternatives, and explained my reasoning, but it's being dismissed as overreacting or selfishness. Some friends say I'm justified because our apartment, routines, and mental health matter, and a 1-bedroom space with a dog is not adequate for another adult for weeks. Others argue that I should compromise because family comes first and it's a temporary crisis. I feel like I've tried everything to support Laura without disrupting our home, but my boundaries are being treated as unreasonable. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my boyfriend's sister stay in our apartment for a month, even though he says I'm being unreasonable. Character count, 6,692, white heavy checkmark. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's family. So, this is a long one, and I've been wrestling with whether I'm in the wrong. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, who's always been very close to me. We grew up in a pretty tight-knit family. Our parents aren't rich, but we have a good life and strong values. I've always considered myself protective of my sister, and while we argue like most siblings, we have a strong bond. Emily recently got engaged to a guy named Jason, 27M. I met Jason several times over the past year, and I'll admit I liked him well enough. He's charming, funny, and seems to genuinely care for my sister. However, the issue has been his family. Right after the engagement, Emily started talking more about her plans to have a small wedding with only close family and friends. I didn't think much of it at first, but when I started hearing about her fiancé's family, I began to get concerned. Jason comes from a very wealthy and extremely traditional family. They have this mindset where appearances matter more than actual relationships, and they have a long history of being quite rude to anyone they consider lower status. At first, Emily told me it wasn't a big deal, but the more she planned with them, the more controlling they became. They insisted on everything from the flowers to the guest list, seating arrangements, and even what the bridesmaids should wear. What really alarmed me was when they began criticizing my sister's career choices, my parents' house. They called it quaint but outdated, and even my own job. It started with small comments during dinner when we all went out to meet them. They made jokes about my job being not ambitious enough and said things like, "Oh, you don't live in the city? That must be quaint." At first, I tried to brush it off as awkward humor, but then the insults became more direct. They commented on my clothing, the way I speak, and even my mannerisms. It got to the point where I felt constantly on edge around them. Emily seemed to think I was overreacting, saying, "They're just teasing. You know how my family is." But I've met plenty of rich families, and this was different. It felt like they were testing boundaries to see how much disrespect they could get away with. Things escalated when the wedding planning really got underway. Jason's parents wanted to invite people I had never met, distant relatives, business partners, and a handful of family friends whom Emily had never met. They insisted that I invite my boyfriend, we've been together 2 years, to meet them at the rehearsal dinner, even though he wasn't very close to the family. Well, he politely declined. They took it as a personal slight and began making snide remarks at Emily and, by extension, me. Emily kept saying that we had to play nice because it was their day and she didn't want drama. I understood that, but the more I observed, the more I realized they were treating my family with contempt. At one point, her future mother-in-law literally told my mom, "You can sit wherever, but don't think your opinions matter here." My mom, who is very patient and polite, looked visibly hurt, and it crushed me to see her treated like that. The breaking point for me came about 3 weeks before the wedding. Jason's family arranged a formal dinner with both sides to iron out final details. I was trying to stay calm, but the moment we sat down, they started criticizing my cooking. I had brought a dish to contribute, my car, it's a used sedan, and even my accent. I grew up in a rural area, and they mocked the way I pronounced certain words. I politely laughed it off at first, but it turned into a relentless barrage. My parents tried to interject, and they were dismissed. Emily told me to just ignore it. It's fine. Don't make a scene. But by the end of dinner, I was shaking with anger and humiliation. After that, I told Emily I wasn't sure I could attend the wedding. I explained that I couldn't be around people who treated my family this way. And it wasn't about Jason. It was about his family's behavior. I said that I loved her. I wanted to celebrate with her, but I couldn't support the day if it meant standing next to people who made my parents feel belittled. Emily got extremely upset. She accused me of being dramatic, selfish, and ruining her happiness. She said that if I didn't come, it would cause a huge rift in their families and that everyone would blame her for not controlling me. I tried reasoning with her, saying that showing up would validate their behavior and make my parents feel even worse. I offered to celebrate with her in a private way, taking her out for brunch, helping her with the dress fittings, anything. But she said it wasn't the same. She kept insisting, "You have to put your feelings aside. This is my big day." I said that I couldn't, and after a tense argument, I told her I wouldn't attend. Since then, the tension has been awful. Emily barely speaks to me unless it's a polite text, and our parents are caught in the middle, trying to convince both of us to reconcile. Jason's family apparently understands my absence and seems to think it's my problem, not theirs. I feel relieved in a way because I don't have to endure more humiliation, but part of me feels guilty because I know this is devastating for Emily. I keep thinking maybe I should just suck it up, but then I remember the way they treated my parents and how controlling they've been about every single aspect of the wedding. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's family. I love my sister and want her to be happy, but I also feel like I can't support her if it means standing beside people who treat my family so poorly. AITA for refusing to help my brother move in with me, even though he's going through a rough time. I, 32M, have always tried to be a responsible and supportive sibling, but recently I found myself in a situation where I had to draw a hard line, and now my family is divided over whether I overreacted. A little context, my brother, Tom, 28M, has always been somewhat unreliable when it comes to adult responsibilities. He's been in and out of short-term jobs, has a habit of living paycheck to paycheck, and generally leans on family whenever things get tough. I love him, but over the years I've had to learn that my help can't be unlimited if it's going to hurt me financially or emotionally. About 3 weeks ago, Tom called me crying. He had just been evicted from his apartment because he didn't pay rent for 3 months. Apparently, he had been giving most of his money to his girlfriend for joint expenses while ignoring his own obligations. I won't lie, I was frustrated just listening, but I kept my tone calm and asked what he wanted me to do. He said he had no one else and asked if he could move in with me until he got back on his feet. I live alone in a small 2-bedroom apartment, which is cozy but not exactly roomy. I explained that I could probably help him for a night or two, but a long-term stay wasn't something I could commit to. He started crying more and insisted that he didn't have anywhere else to go. Here's where the situation got messy. Tom said he'd pay me rent and help around the house. I told him that the issue wasn't the money. It was that I've tried this before, and historically, he doesn't stick to agreements. He's moved in temporarily with my parents and other friends in the past, and has a pattern of staying far longer than planned, leaving messes and causing tension. I reminded him of these past situations gently but firmly. Tom exploded. He said I was being selfish, that family is supposed to support each other, and that if I really cared about him, I would make room. I tried to reason with him, explaining that I was happy to help in practical ways, like giving him a list of affordable rentals, helping him move his stuff into a storage unit temporarily, and even offering to cover 1 month of rent at a cheaper place if he signed a lease immediately. He refused these options, saying they were not enough. Over the next few days, the tension escalated. My parents called and pressured me to let him move in, arguing that it would be cruel to turn him away when he had nowhere else. Friends offered advice, some saying I was right to protect my space, others saying I should just let him crash for a while. Tom started posting passive-aggressive messages on social media about how his terrible older brother refuses to help him, which made me even more upset. Eventually, I made the final decision. I would not let him move in. Instead, I helped him secure a short-term Airbnb for a week and gave him some money for a security deposit at a studio I knew was available. He reluctantly accepted, but made it clear he was angry at me and my lack of compassion. My parents were visibly disappointed, but eventually stopped pressing the issue. Since then, Tom has been staying in the Airbnb, but he's constantly texting me asking for more money, more help, and whether he can extend his stay at my apartment just for a week. I've stayed firm, but every interaction is stressful, and my parents occasionally guilt me for not doing enough. On the one hand, I feel like I'm protecting my mental health and personal space, and I've given him alternative solutions that are reasonable. On the other hand, I can't shake the feeling that I'm being viewed as cruel or uncaring by my family. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother move in, even though he's in a tough spot, given my history with him and my desire to maintain boundaries. Character count, 6,382 if you want. I can also create a longer, even more dramatic version hitting closer to 7,000 characters with more detailed dialogue and family arguments to make it read like one of the trending AITA posts. Do you want me to do that? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of how she treated my partner. I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emma, 28F. Growing up, we had our fair share of fights, but we were mostly supportive of each other, and I was really excited when she got engaged last year. Her fiancé, Mark, 30M, is generally nice enough, though I wouldn't say we've become close. I had met him a few times before the engagement, and interactions were polite but a little awkward. About 6 months ago, Emma started asking me to help with the wedding planning. I was happy to help where I could, but I work a demanding job and live about 3 hours away, so I couldn't always be available on short notice. She seemed fine with that initially, but over time, I started noticing that her requests were becoming more like demands, and she would guilt-trip me if I couldn't drop everything to accommodate her ideas. The situation came to a head about 3 months ago. Emma asked me to attend a bachelorette planning weekend that involved several hours of driving, a full weekend of activities, and paying for my own accommodations. I explained that I couldn't take the time off from work and that the cost was more than I could comfortably afford. She told me I was being unsupportive and implied that if I didn't attend, it meant I didn't love her. I tried reasoning with her, but she shut me down, saying that I was selfish and that this was one of the most important weekends of her life. I decided not to go. The tension didn't end there. Emma's behavior toward my partner, Ben, 34M, has been increasingly concerning. At first, it was little things, making passive-aggressive comments about his job, joking about his weight, or questioning his taste in clothes. I ignored it at first, thinking she was just teasing, but the comments became more pointed over time. During one of her planning sessions, she loudly said, "I can't believe she dates someone like him," honestly, in front of a group of mutual friends, and then smirked. I was mortified, and Ben was understandably upset. I asked Emma privately to stop, but she told me I was too sensitive and that Ben should learn to take a joke. Things escalated further when she started making demands about the wedding itself. She insisted that Ben not wear a tuxedo she didn't approve of, that he should lose a few pounds before the wedding, and that he not dance in a way she considered embarrassing. She even went so far as to comment on our outfits for the engagement photos, critiquing every detail and saying that we were making her wedding look bad by not conforming to her vision. Ben tried to brush it off, but I could see it was affecting him. 2 weeks ago, Emma sent me the final guest list and seating arrangement, and it included a note that Ben would be seated with distant relatives because she felt he wouldn't fit in with our friends and family. I was shocked and hurt, not just on Ben's behalf, but because it felt like a deliberate attempt to isolate him at her wedding. I emailed her back, telling her that I would not be attending if Ben was being treated this way. She responded with a long message accusing me of being controlling and selfish, saying that it's her day and I needed to suck it up and attend regardless of how I felt. I tried to mediate one last time by suggesting that we sit down and have a conversation about boundaries and respect, but she refused, saying that anyone who can't support me is not welcome. At this point, I told her that I would be skipping the wedding entirely. Since then, the family has exploded. My parents are upset with me, saying I should put aside differences for Emma's big day. Extended family members have also started pressuring me, implying that I'm overreacting and that I should just bite the bullet. Ben, understandably, feels betrayed by the idea that I would be made to feel guilty for protecting him. He's told me he fully supports my decision and that he doesn't want to be in a situation where we're treated with disrespect in front of everyone. I've gotten messages from mutual friends trying to convince me to reconsider, saying things like, "It's just one day, can't you let it go?" And "She's your sister. This will ruin your relationship forever if you don't go." But I honestly feel like attending under these conditions would send the wrong message to both Emma and our family. That it's acceptable to disrespect someone I love and that my boundaries don't matter. I understand this is a wedding and I understand how important it is to Emma, but I can't shake the feeling that her behavior toward Ben crosses a line. I also worry that attending the wedding would legitimize her treatment and make future interactions even harder. At the same time, I'm feeling intense guilt because I love my sister and I hate the thought of hurting her or causing a family divide. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of how she's been treating my partner. AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay in my apartment for a month, even though she says I'm being selfish. I, 32F, live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city, which I've had for about 6 years. My apartment is my sanctuary. It's where I work from home as a graphic designer, where I unwind after long days, and where I care for my cat, Machi, who has very specific routines. I've designed my living space to accommodate my work and personal life. It functions well for me as a single occupant. Having anyone else living here full-time, even temporarily, would disrupt my routines, my work, and Machi's stability. My cousin, Hannah, 30F, recently ran into a housing crisis. Her apartment had severe water damage, and the building management told her she couldn't live there for at least a month while repairs were completed. She called me in a panic, asking if she could stay at my apartment until she could find somewhere else. She promised it would only be a month, that she would be quiet, clean up after herself, and even contribute to groceries or utilities. I told her honestly that I wasn't comfortable with her staying for that long. I explained that my apartment is small, my work-from-home schedule requires focus and quiet, and Machi's routines are very important for his well-being. I also mentioned that living together for a month could create tension and stress between us. I offered alternatives. I could help her find a short-term rental or Airbnb, contribute financially to temporary housing, or allow her to store some of her belongings at my apartment while she arranged more permanent accommodations. Hannah didn't take this well. She said I was being selfish and uncaring and accused me of putting my comfort above our family relationship. She argued that a month isn't that long and that friends and family should help each other in times of crisis. She also claimed my apartment was big enough for 2 people and that I was overreacting. I tried to calmly explain that my refusal wasn't personal. I reminded her that Machi's routine is crucial for his health and that my work depends on quiet and structure. I also emphasized that offering financial support or helping her find temporary housing is a way to help her without creating stress or tension in my home. I even suggested compromises, like letting her stay for a weekend while she looked for temporary housing, but she rejected everything, saying none of it was equivalent to staying in my apartment. After this, Hannah started messaging our mutual friends and family, framing me as selfish and uncaring. Some friends contacted me privately, suggesting I just make an exception because she's in crisis, while others agreed that my boundaries are reasonable and that a 1-bedroom apartment isn't suitable for another adult for a month. The situation has created significant strain. Hannah is now distant and passive-aggressive. Family members are subtly criticizing me, and I feel guilty even though I know my boundaries are reasonable. I've tried multiple times to communicate, offer compromises, and maintain calm, but she interprets any refusal as a lack of compassion. I'm torn because I want to support my cousin and maintain our family relationship, but I also need to protect my home, my work, and Machi's stability. Giving in could set a precedent where she expects me to host her whenever she faces a housing issue. But refusing entirely has already caused tension and resentment. Some people say I'm justified because my apartment is my personal space, my work and mental health matter, and having another adult live here for a month is a big ask. Others say I should compromise because it's a temporary crisis and family comes first. I feel like I've done everything reasonably possible to help without disrupting my life, but Hannah frames all of it as selfishness. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay in my apartment for a month, even though she says I'm being selfish. Character count, 6,680 white heavy checkmark. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée live in my house, even though she desperately needs a place to stay. This is going to be a long one, so bear with me. I, 28F, have always been the one in my family who keeps things together, especially when it comes to our parents and our household. I live in a 3-bedroom apartment in the city, which I pay for entirely on my own. It's not huge, but it's comfortable for me. I work full-time in marketing, and I've built my life here over the past 6 years. I'm organized, clean, and I really like having my own space. My younger brother, Matt, 25M, recently got engaged to his fiancée, Jenna, 26F. I've met Jenna a handful of times over the years, and honestly, I've always had a weird vibe from her. She's very dramatic and tends to make everything about her, but I kept it to myself because I wanted to be polite. Here's the thing. A few weeks ago, Jenna called me crying. She was apparently kicked out of her apartment because her roommate accused her of stealing stuff, which I later found out wasn't entirely true. She had let some people borrow things and didn't keep track of it, but she swears it was malicious. Jenna told Matt she had nowhere to go and begged him to ask me if she could stay at my place temporarily. Matt came over and told me, very awkwardly, that Jenna was in a desperate situation and that I was the only one who could help. I said I would think about it. I thought, maybe for a night or two, I could help, but I want to be clear about boundaries because I work full-time and I have a very structured schedule. The next day, I sat down with Matt and said, look, I can't have her living here long-term. My apartment is small, and I need my space. I can help you guys find temporary housing. I can lend her money for short-term Airbnb. I can even let her stay over for a night, but I cannot, under any circumstances, have her move in for weeks or months. Matt seemed a little disappointed, but agreed, saying he'd talk to Jenna. Then Jenna started messaging me directly. She sent me long paragraphs explaining how traumatized she was, how she literally has nowhere else to go, and that Matt doesn't understand what I'm going through. She tried guilt-tripping me by saying I was the only one in the family who cares about people, and that if I didn't help her, she might end up on the streets. I tried to remain calm. I responded that I empathize, but my apartment is not a place for someone to live, and that I could help her in other ways. I even offered to help her find a room in a shared apartment or contribute to a hotel for a few nights. She replied that that's not the same as having a home, and that I was cold and selfish. This started a bigger conflict. Matt kept pressuring me, saying things like, "She's my fiancée. This is important. Can't you just do this for me?" I reminded him that I had been generous in the past, letting friends stay for a night, helping family with rent temporarily, etc. But that doesn't mean I'm obligated to house someone indefinitely, especially someone I barely know and frankly don't get along with. The breaking point came last week. Jenna showed up at my apartment unannounced. She brought a bag, assumed she was staying, and immediately started trying to rearrange my living room to make it more homey. I told her firmly that she was not staying, that this was my home, and she needed to leave. She cried, yelled, and accused me of ruining her life. Matt called during the chaos and was furious, saying I was being heartless and that I needed to support family. Eventually, Jenna left, but she kept texting me all night, saying I was ungrateful and selfish, and Matt hasn't spoken to me since except through passive-aggressive messages. Now, my parents have also weighed in, telling me I should have put family first and that I don't understand what love and compassion mean. My friends mostly side with me, saying she was manipulative and overstepped all boundaries. I feel like I'm in the middle of a family war for simply refusing to let a grown adult move into my apartment against my will. I don't like conflict, but I also can't let someone manipulate me and take over my life. AITA for standing my ground and not letting my brother's fiancée live in my apartment, even though she claims she desperately needs a place to stay. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé attend my wedding after what he did at my engagement party. This has been eating away at me, and I honestly can't tell if I'm being unreasonable. I, 28F, got engaged about 6 months ago to my partner, Tom, 30M, and we've been planning a small, fairly intimate wedding for next summer. We both agreed that we wanted the focus to be on family and close friends rather than a huge spectacle. The engagement party was last month, and this is where things got messy. My sister, Lisa, 26F, has been dating her fiancé, Mark, 27M, for about 2 years. I had always liked Mark, but he could be a bit immature. At our engagement party, which we hosted at a rented event space with around 40 people, Mark started making jokes that I immediately felt were out of line. It began subtly, mocking the way I dress, joking about my job in a way that felt demeaning, but I brushed it off at first, thinking maybe he was just being awkward. Things escalated when my grandmother arrived. She's 78 and has some mobility issues. Mark made a funny comment about how she probably couldn't even walk to the dance floor without a scooter. I could see the hurt on her face, and I quietly asked Mark to stop. He laughed it off and said, "I'm just joking, it's not that serious." I told him it was serious to me and that he needed to apologize. He mumbled something and left it at that. The next issue came during the dinner portion. I had planned a seating arrangement to keep the families together, and I specifically placed Mark away from people he didn't know well because I anticipated his blunt humor could rub some older relatives the wrong way. Mark, however, refused to sit where we asked. He stormed up to me and demanded to sit at the table with my parents, saying it was ridiculous that he couldn't. I tried to reason with him, and he basically argued that he didn't care about our rules because it's my right to sit wherever I want at my own sister's event. That's when I lost my patience and told him, firmly, that he would either sit where we asked or leave the party. He ended up sulking at the bar and making passive-aggressive comments all night. It didn't end there. The absolute breaking point was during speeches. I had asked for no roasting-style jokes because I wanted heartfelt, meaningful speeches. Lisa gave a wonderful speech. Mark, however, grabbed the mic without permission and started cracking jokes at my expense in front of everyone. He made fun of my career, my relationship with my parents, and even my engagement ring, saying it looked cheap. My younger cousins were staring at him in shock. Tom was furious, but tried to calm the situation. Eventually, I told him to get off the stage and leave. He threw a minor tantrum, mumbling about how he didn't mean it like that, and stormed out. After the party, I was upset and vented to Lisa. I expected some understanding, but instead, she got defensive. She said I overreacted and that Mark was just trying to be funny. She also accused me of trying to control her relationship and punishing him for being himself. I explained that it wasn't about control, it was about basic respect, and his actions humiliated me in front of our family. She said she would talk to him, but the conversation ended with her implying that I might have ruined her wedding planning by being overly sensitive. Since then, the tension has been unbearable. I told Lisa that I don't feel comfortable having Mark at my wedding. My wedding is still small, and his presence would make me constantly anxious about him doing something inappropriate again. I offered a compromise. He could attend the reception only or stay at a nearby hotel and come for photos, but Lisa refused, saying that if Mark isn't invited to the wedding, she won't attend either. Now, our parents are divided. My mom is firmly on my side, saying that I shouldn't have to host someone who disrespects me. My dad thinks I should try to be more forgiving, saying it was a one-time mistake. Lisa keeps insisting I'm being unreasonable and is guilt-tripping me about family unity. Tom supports me fully and says he won't let anyone ruin our day, but I feel guilty because I know Lisa is genuinely upset. I also worry that this might create a permanent rift with my sister. But the truth is, I don't think I can let someone who humiliated me and my family at such an important event just walk into my wedding like nothing happened. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to let my sister's fiancé attend my wedding after his behavior at my engagement party, even if it means she might not come? Character count, 6,580. AITA for refusing to compromise when my sister wanted me to change my wedding plans because of her emotional needs. I, 32F, have always been the kind of person who likes to plan ahead and keep things organized. My fiancé, Tom, 34M, and I have been together for 7 years, and we finally got engaged last year. Planning a wedding was something I was genuinely excited about, but I quickly realized that the more people I involved in the process, the more opinions I had to navigate, and nothing prepared me for my sister, Emma, 30F. When Tom and I got engaged, I immediately knew the type of wedding I wanted. I envisioned a small, intimate ceremony at a countryside venue we fell in love with on one of our trips. I wanted around 60 guests, mostly close family and friends. We had both been to massive weddings in the past that felt chaotic and impersonal, and we agreed we didn't want that. I wanted the day to feel calm, beautiful, and genuinely about us. Emma, however, has always had a flair for drama and a tendency to center herself in family matters. When I told her about our plans, she seemed supportive at first, but the first crack in the calm appeared when I told her we wouldn't be inviting some of her friends. She looked visibly upset and said, I just feel like this wedding is going to be about you and Tom, and I'm kind of worried I'm going to feel left out. I tried to reassure her that she would be included in all the major aspects. The rehearsal dinner, her role as maid of honor, and the ceremony itself, but she seemed disappointed anyway. Then the real issue started when I told her about the guest list size. She immediately started complaining that our intimate wedding was so small and selfish, and that we were excluding so many people who care about you. She suggested that we invite at least 100 extra people just to make her happy and to include all the extended family and her friends. I explained that our budget and venue size simply couldn't accommodate that many more people, and that the wedding was meant to reflect Tom and me, not anyone else's social circle. Emma didn't take that well. She started bringing up emotional manipulation tactics, saying that she felt hurt that I wasn't considering her feelings and implying that I was being selfish. She even went as far as crying over the phone and accusing me of wanting a perfect Instagram wedding instead of a real family celebration. I was taken aback because I had literally invited her and her closest friends, as well as all our immediate family. I didn't think anything I wanted for my wedding was unreasonable. The situation escalated when she started suggesting changes to other parts of the wedding. She wanted to pick the color scheme, the flowers, and even the photographer, insisting that the wedding won't feel like a family event unless her input was heavily incorporated. I explained that I wanted to choose the details with Tom because it was our wedding, not hers, and that I valued her input, but ultimately the decisions were ours. She accused me of being controlling and said that this was going to ruin her life if she didn't get her way. Things came to a head when she asked that we change the wedding date entirely. Our venue and vendors were already booked, but Emma insisted that the date conflicted with something important to her, and that if I didn't move the date, she might not attend. This was the point where I realized she was no longer negotiating in good faith. Everything she suggested seemed to be about her happiness and convenience, not ours. I calmly told her that moving the date was not possible, and that she needed to decide whether she wanted to attend or not. She hung up on me and texted a long message saying that I didn't care about family and only cared about my perfect little wedding. At this point, I started to feel incredibly guilty. Our parents even suggested I compromise more, saying that a wedding should be about family harmony. I felt torn because I didn't want to exclude anyone important to Emma, but I also didn't want to sacrifice my own vision for the day. I started doubting myself, worrying that maybe I was being too rigid. A week later, Emma sent me an email listing all the demands she had for the wedding, changing the guest list, selecting her preferred floral arrangements, and ensuring certain songs were played. She ended the email by saying she hoped I would reconsider and remember what family is really about. I responded politely but firmly, reiterating that Tom and I had planned a wedding that reflected us, and that while her presence was important to me, her demands could not be accommodated. Since then, Emma has barely spoken to me. Our parents have subtly pressured me to apologize or change some aspects of the wedding to make her happy. Some of my friends have said I might be overreacting and that weddings are meant to include family. But honestly, I feel like her behavior is manipulative and unreasonable. I don't want to feel guilty for setting boundaries, but at the same time, I'm worried I might be seen as selfish or uncaring. The wedding is in 3 months, and I'm still stressed about whether this family drama is going to overshadow the day. I just want a wedding that feels true to Tom and me, and I don't think asking my sister to respect that is unreasonable. AITA for refusing to compromise on my wedding plans for my sister's emotional comfort. AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding because of the way he treated my daughter. This is going to be long, so I'll try to give all the context. I, 38F, have a daughter, Lily, who just turned 10. My brother, Jake, 36M, is getting married in a few months. The problem is, I don't know if I'm the asshole for refusing to attend the wedding because of how he treated my daughter during a family vacation last year. Some background first. Jake and I were always close as kids, but as adults, our relationship has been strained. He's always been competitive and somewhat controlling. He married young and divorced quickly, and I've always felt like he tries to prove himself through appearances, achievements, and, unfortunately, through criticism of others. My daughter, Lily, is a shy, introverted child who has anxiety around big social situations, and she has always needed gentle encouragement rather than pressure. Last summer, we all went on a family vacation together. Jake, his fiancée Claire, my daughter, and me. Jake had planned a few family activities, including a long hike that was supposed to end with a scenic view. My daughter, who had never done such a long hike before, struggled partway through. She asked to rest a few times, and I supported her, trying to encourage her gently. Jake, however, reacted very negatively. He started yelling at her for holding everyone back and calling her lazy. He even said things like, "If you can't handle a little hike, how are you going to handle life?" My daughter was crying and obviously upset, and I was furious. I told him that this was inappropriate and that Lily didn't need to be shamed for struggling. Jake brushed it off and said I was overreacting and that she needed toughening up. I tried to explain that shaming a child, especially one with anxiety, is not how you help them grow. He refused to listen, and the vacation was ruined. My daughter has not forgotten it and still gets anxious when she hears about Jake or Claire. Fast forward to a few months ago, Jake announced that he was getting married, and the wedding would be in a small town 2 hours away. He invited me and Lily. I hesitated, but initially thought I would try to go for the sake of family, hoping maybe he had matured since last summer. I asked him privately if there would be any pressure situations for Lily, like long hikes, group games, or anything competitive during the wedding weekend, and he said everything would be fine and child-friendly. I decided to tentatively plan to attend, but I still felt uneasy. Then I got the official wedding schedule. One of the events was a team-building adventure day, which included obstacle courses, a ropes course, and a short rock climbing session. I immediately knew this was going to be a nightmare for Lily. I called Jake to express my concerns and suggested that if Lily couldn't participate, she could be excused from the day. He responded angrily, saying that she should learn to face challenges and that it's just a few hours, she can handle it. He refused to make any accommodations. I realized that if I went, Lily would either be forced into a situation that would likely traumatize her, or I would have to isolate her the entire day, making us both miserable. I talked to my ex about it, and he said I should prioritize Lily's emotional well-being over a family wedding. After much deliberation, I sent Jake a message saying that I would not be attending the wedding. I explained that I could not in good conscience put my daughter in a situation where she would be humiliated or pressured, and I could not attend without her. The fallout has been immediate. Jake called me multiple times, yelling and accusing me of being dramatic, selfish, and trying to ruin his special day. He said Claire is heartbroken and that my absence would make the wedding awkward for the family. My parents are upset with me too. They told me I was overreacting and that Jake probably didn't mean it like that. They argue that I'm creating unnecessary drama and that Lily should just toughen up a little. My friends have mostly supported me, saying that protecting my child is more important than a wedding, but some have asked if I overreacted by refusing to attend altogether instead of trying to compromise. I feel guilty because I know this will hurt my parents and my brother. I also miss the idea of being part of this family event, but I keep thinking about last year and how my daughter was humiliated. I just can't bring myself to put her through anything like that again. I've considered sending a gift and a heartfelt AITA for refusing to let my roommate's sister stay in our apartment for a month, even though he says I'm being unreasonable. I, 28F, live with my roommate, Matt, 30M, in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city. We've been living together for about 3 years, and we've developed routines and boundaries that make our living situation manageable. I work from home as a freelance writer, so I spend a lot of time in the apartment and need a quiet environment for work and focus. I also have a cat, Luna, who is very sensitive to changes in the household. Her routine is very strict, and disruptions make her anxious, which in turn affects me. Matt's sister, Rachel, 27F, recently ran into a sudden housing crisis. Her apartment had severe flooding, and she was told it would be uninhabitable for at least a month while repairs were done. Matt called me and asked if Rachel could stay with us temporarily. He explained that it would only be a month and that Rachel would be quiet, help with groceries and utilities, and wouldn't disrupt our routines. I told Matt that I wasn't comfortable with her staying for that long. I explained that our apartment is small, that my work-from-home schedule requires focus, and that Luna's routine is very sensitive to changes. I also pointed out that living together for a month could create tension between all of us. I offered alternatives. I could help Rachel find a short-term rental or Airbnb, contribute financially to her temporary housing, or let her store some belongings here while she found a more permanent solution. Matt didn't seem satisfied. He said I was being rigid and selfish, and that a month isn't a long time. He argued that families should help each other in emergencies and that I was overreacting. I tried to calmly explain that this isn't about not caring for Rachel. It's about maintaining a functional living environment, protecting Luna's well-being, and keeping our routines intact. I reminded him that I'm more than willing to help financially, assist with finding temporary housing, or help store her belongings. But having her live here full-time for a month was not feasible. Matt's tone got more frustrated. He suggested compromises, like letting Rachel sleep in the living room or in his bedroom temporarily. I explained that even with those compromises, our routines, Luna's comfort, and my workspace would be disrupted. I also explained that living together for weeks in close quarters could easily create tension and conflict. I emphasized that there are other ways to help Rachel without causing this kind of stress. Rachel also started contacting me directly, saying I was being unreasonable and selfish, and that Matt and I should just make it work. She insisted our apartment is big enough for 3 people, and that I was prioritizing comfort over helping family. Matt eventually got involved again, frustrated with my refusal, and started telling me that I was being inflexible and that I was damaging our family relationships. I've been feeling stressed and guilty. I've tried to communicate calmly, offer compromises, and suggest multiple alternatives to genuinely help Rachel without disrupting our home. But both Rachel and Matt frame any refusal as selfishness. My friends say I'm justified because our apartment is small, Luna's routine matters, and my work-from-home setup requires focus. Others say I should compromise because it's a temporary emergency and family comes first. I am torn. I want to help Rachel and maintain peace with Matt, but I also need to protect my home, my work, and Luna's stability. Giving in could set a precedent where family members expect me to host them whenever they face a housing issue. Refusing entirely has already caused tension between Matt, his sister, and me. So, Reddit. AITA for refusing to let my roommate's sister stay in our apartment for a month, even though he says I'm being unreasonable. Character count, 6,671, white heavy checkmark. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she asked me to take a huge risk with my personal life. This all started about 8 months ago. My sister, Lena, and I have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, she was the golden child, smart, pretty, and effortlessly popular, while I was quieter, more introverted, and focused on school and work. Our parents were very supportive of Lena in every way, which was fine most of the time, but it always made me feel like I had to compete for attention. Over the years, we've had periods of closeness and periods of barely speaking. Right now, I'd say we're in a functional middle ground where we text occasionally and get along if we're in the same room, but we aren't super close. So Lena got engaged about a year ago, and she immediately started planning what she calls her dream wedding. I try to be supportive, offering to help with small things here and there, but she's always been a bit controlling, so she often rejected my suggestions. I didn't take it personally, just figured she had a very specific vision. The problem started when she asked me to take on a very specific role in her wedding. She wants me to be her maid of honor. That, in itself, isn't an issue. I don't mind being a supportive sister. The issue is what she asked me to do as part of that role. Her idea is that, in order to make her big day perfect, she wants me to host a fundraiser for a cause that she's passionate about. Now, she isn't just asking me to throw a bake sale or something small. She wants me to organize a multi-$1,000 charity event, and she wants it done about 2 months before her wedding. The catch is, she knows I'm currently saving for a down payment on my first apartment. I work a steady job, but I live paycheck to paycheck, and any large expenditure would completely derail my plans. When I expressed my concerns, she got upset. She said, "I can't believe you wouldn't do this for me. You're my sister. You're supposed to support me." I tried explaining that supporting her doesn't have to mean putting myself in financial jeopardy. I offered alternatives, like helping her plan smaller fundraising efforts that wouldn't cost me anything, or helping her find sponsors and donors instead of paying out of pocket. But she dismissed everything I suggested, saying, "No, it has to be you. I can't trust anyone else to do this right." I felt cornered, and it wasn't just about money. Planning a fundraiser of this scale would take hundreds of hours of work, and I already have a demanding job. I have little free time as it is, and this would mean working evenings, weekends, and basically devoting all of my energy to something that isn't my responsibility. I reminded her of that, but she just said, "You don't love me enough to make this sacrifice." Things escalated when our parents got involved. They called me and tried to guilt me, saying that Lena is only asking for help once in her life, and I should just make the sacrifice. They even said that if I don't do this, I'm going to ruin her wedding and make her resent me forever. I felt trapped, like I was being forced to choose between my financial stability and my sister's happiness. After thinking about it for weeks, I made a decision. I told Lena that I couldn't organize the fundraiser, that I'm excited for her wedding, and that I will be there in spirit, but cannot take on the role of maid of honor if it requires putting myself in financial danger. I offered to participate in smaller ways that wouldn't compromise my well-being, like helping with the rehearsal dinner, decorating, or organizing a small group of friends to do certain tasks. Her reaction was explosive. She accused me of being selfish, uncaring, and ungrateful. She said she doesn't want me at her wedding if I can't fully commit. Our parents tried to mediate, but Lena refuses to speak to me. She sent me texts that alternate between guilt-tripping me and trying to shame me into changing my mind. I haven't responded to most of them because I don't want to get dragged into an argument. Some friends have said I'm doing the right thing and that my financial security should come first. Others have suggested that I should just take on the fundraiser and figure out the money somehow, because family comes first. I feel torn. On one hand, I don't want to miss my sister's wedding or damage our relationship irreparably. On the other hand, I feel like she's asking me to sacrifice something fundamental in my life for something that is ultimately her dream and not mine. I haven't seen her in person since I told her no, and I have no idea if she'll even invite me to the wedding formally. The idea of walking into a day where she's angry at me and possibly silent is stressful. I worry that by sticking to my boundaries, I'm permanently damaging our relationship, but I also know that giving in would make me resentful and possibly put me in serious financial trouble. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to take on this enormous financial and personal responsibility for my sister's wedding. I feel like I'm being punished for setting boundaries, but I also wonder if I'm being too rigid and should just suck it up for the sake of family. The main issue is that she isn't just asking me to help. She's asking me to risk my financial stability and personal time in a way that feels unreasonable, and it's causing tension that might last far beyond the wedding. I'm still hoping we can repair our relationship, but I'm not sure how after this. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.